Vladimir Putin will have paid very close attention to the location of the Syrian artillery battery where 4 Russian soldiers lost their lives at the weekend. The desert around Deir ez-Zor remains a dangerous place, politically as well as physically, in which the Americans and Russians play an extremely risky game of war. Russian soldiers killed in surprise ISIS attack in Syria. Putin still suspects the Americans helped the artillery guidance of a mortar battery which killed the commander of the Russian Far East Fifth Army in Deir ez-Zor, Lieutenant General Valery Osipov, less than a year ago. Was the mortar fired by pro-American Kurdish fighters? Or by ISIS? The Russians say that ISIS mobile attackers stormed the Syrian artillery position this weekend at night, the Islamists' normal routine, streaming out of the desert wadis in suicide trucks and motorcycles, even though the little Syrian forts, hillocks of sand and cement strewn across the vast sand plateaus, are supposed to be invulnerable. So now the Russians are directing artillery. First they were the air component to the Syrian army, their forward air observers on the ground with Syrian troops directing the Suhois onto Assad's enemies. Then the Russians were the deminers of Palmyra and Deir ez-Zor, Homs and Aleppo. Then the Russian military police escorted the beaten jihadists to the wastelands of Idlib province or the Turkish border. The Russians liaise between the Syrians and the pro-American Kurds on the Euphrates River. 12 months ago, Putin's top artillery technicians were searching through the rubble of eastern Aleppo to draw up painstaking maps of the fall of Shot, the exact bomb crater and blast effects of air-dropped Russian munitions. I met one of their teams. Its reports were circulated, of course, to Russian military intelligence. But they first go directly to the Kremlin. Putin reads them. He is a micromanager. There will be no Brezhnev-style Afghanistan disasters in Syria, or so the Russians pray, no slovenly retreats across the Amu Darya by political generals, no Kremlin lethargy. Russian officers speak good Arabic, and quite good English, products of the Moscow School of Foreign Languages, and, like the Syrian army, their officers go to the front lines. That's why Osipov was killed. Putin decided to pursue his Chechen and Russian jihadi enemies all the way to Syria, and kill them all. He saved his ally, Bashar al-Assad. But at the very same time, give or take a warning or two and one downed Russian jet courtesy of a later to repent Erdogan, he remained a trusted friend of Israel, Iran, Turkey, Egypt, Lebanon, Saudi Arabia and so on. Refusing to join his insane counterpart in Washington in a sectarian war between Sunnis and Shias, Putin deploys the one phrase which unites every dictator, prime minister, mafiosi autocrat, king, president, mass-murdering tyrant, public relations hacker fawning editor, the war on terror. I reckon Putin and Trump use this circumlocution about the same number of times. It's a cracker for the masses, and it doesn't matter if it's uttered by a cynic in the Kremlin or a guy in the White House who is completely bananas. But Putin, of course, is a man for all seasons. He accepts the praise of Bashar al-Assad for saving Syria. He calls Israel's racist defense minister Avigdor Lieberman brilliant. Indeed, one Russian translation of a Kremlin meeting quoted Putin as claiming that Lieberman, a former nightclub bouncer from the ex-Soviet Union, was a great Russian. Netanyahu is always welcome at the Kremlin, even when he's bombing the Iranians in Syria. Sultan Erdogan of Turkey, whose air force shot down one of Putin's jets, scurried to befriend Putin when the Russians ordered their holidaymakers to dry up Turkey's seaside tourist industry. When Putin traveled to Erdogan's Golden Palace in Istanbul, he stationed a helicopter carrier bang in the very center of the Bosphorus, right opposite the top copy. Egypt's Sisi takes Putin to the opera in Cairo. In the Kremlin, Putin welcomes King Abdullah of Saudi Arabia. He welcomes the Qataris. He pays court to Iran's Rouhani. He listens, glowering, to Bashar, as the Supreme Leader Khamenei explains the evils of American interference in the Middle East, this only 2 years ago. Mercifully, the Iranian did not mention the Russian invasion of northern Iran in the Second World War, nor its setting up of Soviets in Azerbaijan and Mahabad in Iranian Kurdistan when the war was over. No more than Sisi recalled how Sadat threw the Russians out of Egypt in 1972. No more than Putin would have mentioned to Assad how the younger lion of Damascus flirted with the West and attended the Bastille Day parade with Nicolas Sarkozy in 2008. Trump was equally hooked by this military flummery last year, and declined to respond publicly to Russian requests in 2000 about Chechen rebels who had fled Russia. But after the Libyan debacle, Putin was going to take no nonsense when his Western partners tried to unseat Assad. There would be no more humiliating Russian retreats from the Mediterranean. When the Russians later wanted to talk to the American-trained anti-Islamist Libyan military senior Dagher Khalifa Haftar, they simply air-freighted him onto a Russian carrier offshore. When the Americans complained that Russian airstrikes in Syria were only hitting the CIA's favorite and fairly mythical Free Syrian Army rebels, Russia's Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov grimly replied that, if it looks like a terrorist, if it acts like a terrorist, if it walks like a terrorist, it's a terrorist. Putin sheds as few tears over the Russian mercenaries who die in Syria fighting the Kurds as he did over the Kurds who died defending Afrin from the Turkish army and its ISIS cohorts. That deal seems to have been simple. The Turks could have Afrin province, for the time being, if they let the Syrians and Russians clear the Islamists out of Idlib province in the future. Note, watch out for this war. Spain's new Prime Minister Pedro Sanchez poses after a vote on a no-confidence motion at the Spanish Parliament in Madrid. Spain's parliament ousted Prime Minister Mariano Rajoy in a no-confidence vote sparked by fury over his party's corruption woes, with his socialist arch-rival Pedro Sanchez automatically taking over. Zinedine Zidane looks on after a press conference to announce his resignation as manager from Real Madrid. He confirmed he was leaving the Spanish Giants, just days after winning the Champions League for the third year in a row. A worker cleans up the Millionaire migrants' makeshift camp along the Canal de Saint-Denis near Porte de la Villette, northern Paris, following its evacuation on May 30th. More than 1,000 migrants and refugees were evacuated early in the morning from the camp that had been set up for several weeks along the canal. Police and ambulances are seen at the site where a gunman shot dead 3 people, 2 of them policemen, before being killed by elite officers, in the eastern Belgian city of Liege. French President Emmanuel Macron meets with Mamadou Gassama, 22, from Mali, at the presidential Élysée Palace in Paris. Gassama, living illegally in France, is being honored by Macron for scaling an apartment building over the weekend to save a 4-year-old child dangling from a 5th-floor balcony. Migrants wait to disembark from the ship Aquarius in the Sicilian harbor of Catania, Italy. Ireland awaits the official result of a referendum that could end the country's ban on abortion. Co-director of Together for Yes L.B. Smith speaks to the media after exit polls suggested victory for the Yes campaign. Film producer Harvey Weinstein arrives at the first precinct in Manhattan where he turned himself into New York police for sexual misconduct charges. Russian President Vladimir Putin, meets with his French counterpart Emmanuel Macron at the Constantine Palace in Strelna, outside St. Petersburg, on May 24, 2018. People protest outage to the Tamil Nadu House after at least 10 people were killed when police fired on protesters seeking closure of plant on environmental grounds in town of Thoothukudi in southern state of Tamil Nadu, in New Delhi. People demonstrate in Paris during a nationwide day protest by French public sector employees and public servants against the overhauls proposed by French President Emmanuel Macron, calling them an attack by the centrist leader against civil services as well as their economic security. Newly appointed Catalan President Quim Torra arrives to visit jailed Catalan separatist politicians at the Estremera jail near Madrid. Venezuelan President Nicolas Maduro casts his vote during the presidential elections in Caracas. Maduro was seeking a second term in power. Channelized lava emerges on Kilauea volcano's lower East Rift zone on Hawaii. The USGS said on its website that a fast-moving Pahoehoe lava flow that emerged from Fissure 20 continues to flow southeast, with the quickest of 3 lobes progressing at 230 yards (210 meters) per hour. Santa Fe High School student Dakota Schrader is comforted by her mother Susan Davidson following a shooting at the school in Texas. Schrader said her friend was shot in the incident. Multiple people have been killed. French President Emmanuel Macron, British Prime Minister Theresa May and German Chancellor Angela Merkel meeting during the EU Western Balkans Summit in Sofia, Bulgaria. People hold flags with the state coat of arms of Russia as they drive along a bridge, which was constructed to connect the Russian mainland with the Crimean Peninsula across the Kerch Strait. Palestinians run away from tear gas shot at them by Israeli forces during a protest in Ramallah, in the occupied West Bank. A Palestinian demonstrator runs during a protest against the U.S. Embassy move to Jerusalem and ahead of the 70th anniversary of the Nakba at the Israel-Gaza border. A bullet hole on the window of a cafe in Paris, the day after a knifeman killed 1 man and wounded 4 other people before being shot dead by police. Germany's Chancellor Angela Merkel looks on after receiving the Lamp of Peace, the Nobel Catholic Award for her work of conciliation for the peaceful cohabitation of peoples, at the Basilica Superiore of St. Francis of Assisi in Italy. Police forensics investigate the death of 7 people in a suspected murder-suicide in Australia. 4 children are among 7 people that were found dead at a rural property in Osmington, near Margaret River. Detectives are investigating the incident, which was said to be treated as a murder-suicide, media reported. 2 firearms were found at the scene, Western Australia police said. Missiles rise into the sky as Israeli missiles hit air defense position and other military bases in Damascus, Syria. The Israeli military on Thursday said it attacked dozens of Iranian targets in neighboring Syria in response to an Iranian rocket barrage on Israeli positions in the Golan Heights, in the most serious military confrontation between the two bitter enemies to date. Iranian MPs burning a U.S. flag in the parliament in Tehran. Iran said it will hold talks with signatories to a nuclear deal after U.S. President Donald Trump's decision to withdraw from the accord, which it branded psychological warfare. President Hassan Rouhani also said Iran could resume uranium enrichment without limit, in response to Trump's announcement. Newly elected Prime Minister of Armenia Nikol Pashinyan addresses the crowd in Republic Square in Yerevan. The leader of protests that gripped Armenia for weeks was named the country's new prime minister on Tuesday, overcoming the immediate political turmoil but raising uncertainty about the longer term. Russian President Vladimir Putin walks before his president inauguration ceremony at the Kremlin in Moscow. Lava from a robust fissure eruption on Kilauea's East Rift Zone consumes a home, then threatens another, near Pahoa, Hawaii. The total number of homes lost within the Lalani Estate subdivision thus far is 21, and geologists from the Hawaii Volcanoes Observatory do not expect the eruption to cease anytime soon. Local state of emergency has been declared after Mount Kilauea erupted near residential areas, forcing mandatory evacuation of about 1,700 citizens from their nearby homes. The crater's floor collapsed on the 1st of May and is since then continuing to erode its walls, and generating huge explosions of ashes. Several earthquakes have been recorded in the area where the volcanic eruptions continue, including a 6.9 magnitude earthquake which struck the area on the 4th of May. Russian police carrying struggling opposition leader Alexei Navalny at a demonstration against President Vladimir Putin in Moscow. Thousands of demonstrators denouncing Putin's upcoming inauguration into a 4th term gathered in the capital's Pushkin Square. Chinese President Xi Jinping speaks at an event to mark Karl Marx's 200th birthday at the Great Hall of the People in Beijing. President Vladimir Putin meets with FIFA President Gianni Infantino in Sochi, ahead of the 2018 World Cup in Russia. Supporters of opposition lawmaker Nikol Pashinyan protest in Republic Square in Yerevan, Armenia. Pashinyan has urged his supporters to block roads, railway stations and airports after the governing Republican Party voted against his election as prime minister. Cubans marched during the May Day rally at Revolution Square in Havana. "The sky is the limit," a Saudi man and woman fly over the Arabian Sarawak Mountains in the first-ever joint wingsuit flight in traditional dress. A symbolic leap of faith towards women's empowerment in Saudi Arabia. A general view for the damaged railway station in Al-Qadam neighborhood, after it was recaptured from Islamic State militants, in the south of Damascus. According to media reports, the Syrian army continued the military offensive it has launched earlier this month against militant groups entrenching in southern Damascus and captured several neighborhoods, including Al-Qadam and Al-Asali, and targeting the remnants of armed groups in Al-Hajar al-Aswad and its surrounding in Damascus' southern countryside. Comedian Michelle Wolf attends the celebration after the White House Correspondents' Dinner. Conservatives walked out after Wolf brutally ridiculed President Donald Trump and his aides during her piece. North Korean leader Kim Jong-un and South Korean President Moon Jae-in raised their hands after signing on a joint statement. North Korean leader Kim Jong-un, left, and South Korean President Moon Jae-in raised their hands after signing on a joint statement at the border village of Panmunjom in the demilitarized zone, South Korea. The Korean War will be formally declared over after 65 years, the North and South have said. At a historic summit between leaders Kim Jong-un and Moon Jae-in, the neighboring countries agreed they would work towards peace on the peninsula with a formal end to the conflict set to be announced later this year. The pair agreed to bring the two countries together and establish a peace zone on the contested border. Women hold portraits of their relatives, who were victims of the Chernobyl nuclear disaster, during a commemoration ceremony in Kiev, Ukraine. Rohingya refugees gather in the no-man's land behind Myanmar's border lined with barbed wire fences in Mongda district, Rakhine state bounded by Bangladesh. Myanmar government said on April 15 it repatriated on April 14 the first family of Rohingya out of some 700,000 refugees who have fled a brutal military campaign, a move slammed by a rights group as a PR stunt ignoring UN warnings that a safe return is not yet possible. President Donald Trump, French President Emmanuel Macron, First Lady Melania Trump and Brigitte Macron hold hands on the White House balcony during a state arrival ceremony in Washington. A boy walks on a pile of garbage covering a drain in New Delhi. Newly ordained priests lie on the floor as Pope Francis leads a mass in St. Peter's Basilica at the Vatican. South Koreans cheered during the welcoming event for the Inter-Korean Summit between South Korea and North Korea in Seoul. The Inter-Korean Summit is scheduled on April 27, 2018 at the Joint Security Area in Panmunjom, agreed by South Korean President Moon Jae-in and North Korea's leader Kim Jong-un. A Palestinian slings a shot by burning tires on the Israel-Gaza border, following a demonstration calling for the right to return. Palestinian refugees either fled or were expelled from what is now the State of Israel during the 1948 war. Outgoing Cuban President Raúl Castro raising the arm of Cuba's new president Miguel Díaz-Canel after he was formally named by the National Assembly, in Havana. A historic handover ending 6 decades of rule by the Castro brothers. The 57-year-old Díaz-Canel, who was the only candidate for the presidency, was elected to a 5-year term with 603 out of 604 possible votes in the National Assembly. Turkey's President Recep Tayyip Erdogan announces early presidential and parliamentary elections for June 24, 2018, at the Presidential Palace, in Ankara. Erdogan announced the snap elections, originally scheduled for November 2019, in a move that will usher in a new political system increasing the powers of the president. He said the new system needed to be implemented quickly in order to deal with a slew of challenges ahead, including Turkey's fight against Kurdish insurgents in Syria and Iraq. European lawmakers raise placards reading, "Stop the War in Syria," in protest against airstrikes launched by the US, Britain and France in Syria last week, criticizing the legitimacy of the operation, as French President Emmanuel Macron delivers his speech at the European Parliament in Strasbourg. Macron is expected to outline his vision for the future of Europe, to push for deep reforms of the 19-nation Eurozone, and will launch a drive to seek European citizens' opinions on the European Union's future. People participate in a protest against the rape of an 8-year-old girl in Kathua near Jammu, and a teenager in Unnao, Uttar Pradesh state, in Bangalore, India. Fireworks are set off as the final performance takes place during the closing ceremony for the 2018 Commonwealth Games. The wreckage of the Scientific Studies and Research Center compound in the Barza district, north of Damascus, after the United States, UK and France launched strikes against Syrian President Bashar al-Assad's regime early on April 14 in response to an alleged chemical weapons attack after mulling military action for nearly a week. Syrian state news agency SANA reported several missiles hit a research center in Barza, north of Damascus, destroying a building that included scientific labs and a training center. Indian activists gathered to show support for the chairperson of the Delhi Commission for Women, Swati Maliwal, who is on a hunger strike against the alleged rapes in Uttar Pradesh, Jammu and Kashmir, in New Delhi, India. According to news reports, Maliwal is sitting on hunger strike demanding that authorities take strict actions against the alleged rapists. And a bigger compromise seems to have been achieved with the Israelis. They could hit the Iranians if they wished, but no war on Syria, no Israeli or American no-fly zones, and, above all, no war with Iran. The Iranians don't want a war with Israel, neither side would win, as Netanyahu knows, and in Tehran, Putin is the voice of common sense. Once it was the State Department which called for restraint on all sides, usually when the Israelis were invading or bombing Lebanon or Gaza, but now it's the Kremlin which calls for restraint between Israel and Iran. So to what degree has Putin's shrewd, hard, sardonic character brought all this about, and how much did Trump's instability and unpredictability hand Russia its political triumph in the Middle East? It's tempting to say a bit of both. But I suspect that an Obama might have provided a regional equilibrium which Putin has now claimed for himself. When Moscow is now the interlocutor available in the Middle East, it's difficult to take the gift of equilibrium politics away from Putin. Europe's case is hopeless. Europe cannot engage with a Kremlin that still occupies part of Ukraine and annexes the Crimea. It showers sanctions upon Russia. But it grovels like the Americans to an Israel which occupies the West Bank and annexes Jerusalem and Golan, and the very word sanctions or disinvestment cannot be mentioned in Europe without accusations of anti-Semitism. Israel can fire off its missiles into Syria after claiming that Iranian missiles had fallen on Golan, actually Israeli-occupied Syrian Golan, although that got a little lost in the telling, but Putin is not going to order an end to Golan attacks. There is a strong suspicion that it was the Syrian army which fired those missiles at the Israelis, in retaliation for the constant Israeli bombing of Syrian forces, never ISIS forces, of course, over the last 3 years. Thus, the Israelis, fearful of a reopening of the South Lebanese front, and a future war with Hezbollah, have unthinkingly opened Golan Front, along a border which has been largely silent for 45 years. It's the kind of equation Putin can savor. Be sure, he'll be there to intervene if anyone needs him. And he's insisting that it's the Syrians who move onto the Golan Plateau on their own. No Iranians. No Hezbollah. The Syrians can't object if they're back on their border with occupied Golan. And the Israelis can't object if Russia keeps the Iranians and the Hezbollah out. Deconfliction, the Russians like to call this. Everyone backs off. No war on Golan. That's the hope. As for what the experts like to call geopolitics, Putin immediately understood the need to uphold the Iranian nuclear accord when Trump tore it up. At one stroke, he became a closer ally of Iran, he could sympathize with Europe, and he was able to present himself as steadfast in a treaty he signed with China. But he is entering a potential market war with the US, a dollar war, alongside a Europe whose governments may be prepared to stand up to Washington, some of them, at least, but whose big businessmen are already showing their usual cowardice in the face of American profit and loss. There is something scornful about all this. Putin is not going to worry about Russian mercenary deaths in Syria. Their activities are intended to test American military willpower in Syria. Nor does America weep for its Kurdish mercenaries, or protect them in Afrin. Putin is not going to scream about human rights abuses in Gaza, the shooting down of unarmed demonstrators, or the Israeli destruction of clinics or hospitals, when his own jets have been destroying clinics and hospitals in Syria. He sticks to the war on terror, and being an ally of all. The children may rattle their toys, but the Tsar has the keys to the nursery. The crackpot in the White House neither knows nor cares nor, one suspects, understands. He long ago opened the door for Putin, and Putin walked straight through it.